and welcome to the Imagine Crafts YouTube channel. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted here on YouTube, and today I am going to create a congratulations card. So this could be for any occasion. I was thinking maybe this might be for congrats on your wedding or engagement. I thought I would go with a combination of colors that I've seen work well together. I don't mix the two colors very often, but I'm gonna try pink and gold as a combo. So I started with just some Delicata pink shimmer ink, and I swiped it across this panel. This panel is large enough for me to die cut from, and I have a specific die in mind to use, so I did make sure this was larger than what I plan to use. And because Delicata ink is a pigment ink, it's a little bit sticky, so I'm able to pour embossing powder right over it. And what I'm doing here is I'm just sprinkling on that embossing powder at that angle at the very top. And that's so that I don't have quite as solid of a coverage of the embossing powder, and instead I get that almost an ombre effect where through the embossing powder a little bit of that pink shimmer Delicata ink is still showing through. So what I'll go ahead and do is heat emboss to melt all of that wonderful embossing powder. And heat embossing is still magical to me every time I do it. Just watching the transformation of that powder go from that dull, grainy look to this gorgeous shine. It's really fun to watch every time. Now, I did take my heat gun to the pink shimmer at the top because it is a pigment ink. I wanted to just speed up that drying process a little bit. I did notice though that it lightens the ink a little bit, but that's okay. I just want it dry enough to move on to my next step. And here I've started the exact same way with some swipes of that Delicata pink shimmer ink, and then I'm using a glue pen to just draw right on top. And you can see I poured some embossing powder, the same gold embossing powder, right over, but you could see it stuck quite a bit because I didn't actually let this panel dry, and I didn't take the heat gun to it for very long. But that is one of the benefits of using a glue pen to draw with instead of maybe a Versamark pen that has that same sticky ink as a Versamark ink pad. Because once that glue dries, it's actually going to hold your embossing powder, and then you can do what I'm doing where I just take a little paintbrush, and wipe off brush off all of the excess powder, because the glue does a really good job of holding it down. Whereas the Versamark ink, it's a sticky ink, but the benefit of that one is if you didn't want any powder at all, even after you've inked it, you can still brush it off completely. So there are pros and cons to both methods. So the glue pen, a little bit more of a long-lasting grab. The Versamark ink is gives you some flexibility if you just want to undo everything altogether. So now that I've drawn these little gold hearts, I'm going to go ahead and heat set this one too and melt all of that powder. So what's fabulous about this technique is that you can really make your own, basically your own specialty cardstock with a hint of Gold-Embossed. And if you feel like the heat gun faded that pink or the Delicata ink too much, you can always swipe right back over because the Gold-Embossed will resist. So you don't have to worry about this ink blocking any of that beautiful Gold-Embossed that we worked so hard to create. And so you can just continue to swipe your ink pad over. Now, because I'm die cutting that larger panel, you do want to make sure that if you are going to swipe some additional Delicata ink over that top portion, maybe do that before you die cut, because it'll be harder to darken the individual letters after you've die cut it. So when it's the larger panel, it's a lot more easy to make those sorts of adjustments. And when I make background panels like this that I feel are really the star of the card, I like to be minimal with anything else that I do with it, so that the effect that we created with that gold embossed, almost ombre effect is really prominent and not covered up by anything else. This particular die set does come with an additional die that cuts out the word yay with an exclamation point, and I thought it would be fun to die cut that word out of the smaller panel that we drew the gold hearts onto. But as it turns out, these letters there are some portions of the letter that are fairly wide, but some are very thin. And so you can't really appreciate the hearts. There's some gold emboss, you can definitely see that, but it's just more of a very abstract, stray markings here and there. So there isn't a really defined heart on any of the pieces, and I did die cut it twice just to see if I could get lucky and capture a really well defined heart. And I really couldn't get a section that felt like it really kind of showed off that pattern. So ultimately, in the end, I don't end up using the word that I die cut out of that smaller panel, but I still love that effect, and I'll be keeping that in the back of my mind to do again on another project. Kind of like I said a moment ago, when I make panels like that, it's really nice to be able to show it off, and I thought maybe this would look a little bit almost like pattern paper that has that, a more specialty effect of it, because the Delicata ink has a beautiful sheen to it. And then of course we've got that lovely gold emboss. But I did not draw the heart pattern in a dense enough configuration to where you can still see it even if you're just die cutting a portion of it. So that's one thing that I learned, is to, if I'm planning to die cut into a panel like that, to really make sure that depending on the die, that I'm drawing the pattern in such a way that it's actually going to be appreciated. So in the end, what I end up doing is, because I did already die cut that word twice out of my panel, what I ended up doing was die cutting it a third time, but out of plain white. And then I just stacked all 3 layers, because why let that go to waste? And even though the beautiful panel that we created, those aren't seen here, they are at least adding some depth and dimension. And ultimately, I feel like it actually works a little bit better to just use white, especially if this is going to be for a wedding card. Congrats on your wedding card, because I feel like the hearts might have been a little bit too whimsical, where the white keeps it all very classic, and I feel like it actually stands out against the gold emboss a little bit better than what the pink would have. So at the end of the day, I do think that this resulted in a better looking card. And then I made 2. So of course, all of the little scraps, the little die cuts left over from that panel, I did not want that to go to waste. So I saved it all, and I reconfigured it, and I put it onto a black cardstock, and that way we're using the negative as well, and very little of that panel went to waste. I hope that you enjoyed these 2 cards that I shared, and if you did, here are a couple more crafting tutorials that you might also enjoy. Thanks so much, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!